Golden Pin Lanes in Tucson, Arizona. It's the finals of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. Good evening, everybody. I'm Denny Schreiner along with Mike Durbin. Welcome to Tucson. It's warm outside. Probably will be very warm inside when the pros start striking. But the first question for you, Mike Durbin, this is the 26th time that PBA has staged a tournament in Tucson, Arizona. Only one player has ever won twice.
It's really amazing, Denny. We've been coming to Golden Pin Lanes here for the last 13 years, and we had 13 years at a previous center in town, and yet only one player, and that was Barry Asher in 1973 and 1976, was able to win twice. Some players have been close, including myself. I finished second here twice as recently as 1985 and one in 1982, but no one except Barry has been able to win twice here, and I really don't know the reason for it, but I do know that tonight we have another player on the telecast that has a Tucson Open championship, and that player is Hugh Miller. He's looking to get his second tonight.
Time now to take a look at the assortment of players on the telecast this evening, starting with the current Rookie of the Year, Marc McDowell.
Marc shot a whopping 269 his final game last night to make it into our championship round.
And he'll have to face off against one of the PBA's all-time best, Marshall Holman, with 20 titles.
Many consider Marshall the greatest player in the game today. However, it's been a while since he had his last victory. He'd like to get victory number 21 tonight.
And Mr. November, Tom Baker, with 7 PBA titles, starts in the number 3 position.
Tom has been bowling very well, but has had some hand problems that have bothered him even during this tournament. He says, however, he can make it through 3 games tonight.
And Hugh Miller, the 1983 winner here, would love to make it 2 titles in Tucson.
He's been very good on television. He has 4 PBA titles, a career record of 8-3 on television. So when he gets there, he doesn't lose very often.
And from Centerville, Indiana, it is Scott Devers. Just 2 weeks ago, he finished second up in Seattle.
And he led this tournament by over 400 pins as he averaged almost 228 in lapping the field. He's looking for title number 1 tonight.
Mike, in the past, the scores have been pretty high here at Golden Pin Lanes on the televised finals. What are your thoughts this evening about the championship pair 15 and 16? I know you have a lot of experience on that pair.
Well, I bowled very well. I once shot 250 on this pair, and the last time I bowled on it, I shot 150. So let's hope that our players tonight do more towards that 250 category. I'm looking, though, for scores right around in the 210 to 220 range to win the matches.
Well, it should be a tremendous final. Stay tuned, because the opening match of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge is coming up in just a moment or so. And don't forget, coming up in just a moment or so, it'll be Marc McDowell. He'll match up with the Medford Meteor, Marshall Holman. Stay tuned. Match number 1 in the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge, live from Golden Pin Lanes in Tucson, Arizona. Marshall Holman will start on the left-hand lane. And Marshall Holman had a very solid week. Mike Durbin got into the finals, qualified very high, and pretty much stayed right there.
Bowled super all week long. 15 and 16. Marshall says the left lane is tighter tonight, so it may be the pivotal lane. Just made it back. We were watching him in practice, and he was showing that similar line and leaving the 2-8-10 several times in practice, but opened up the match. He got a little extra fingers.
And here's your first look at 25-year-old Marc McDowell, the current PBA Rookie of the Year, last year winning a record $51,285. As only a youngster out there, Mike Durbin. That's a pretty good year.
Showed me something last night. He bowled Rod Pasteur, and the winner of the match was going to make it into the television finals, and Rod Pasteur bowled 267 as McDowell starts with a 7-pin and lost, as McDowell beat him with 269 to 267. Standing ovation. The crowd really got a treat on that one.
Tremendous crowds all week long here in Tucson. There you see 209.35, the 87 average. Not the greatest, but this week averaged 221.5. Marc also going 12, 11, and 1 in match play. It was difficult to pick up those 30-pin bonuses this week.
Well, when you can't win the games, then you got to knock down more pins if you want to get there.
First cross alley spare for Marc McDowell, hard and straight. McDowell, if you recall last summer watching the PBA Tour on ESPN, was the top seed player for the Ebonite tournament up in Seattle, and was defeated there by Dale Eagle in a very tough final. This week there you see 221.5. And Mike, do you think that Marc McDowell learned anything from leading a tournament and not winning it?
Well, you always learn something from every experience you have in bowling. I think really that victory that he had last night has got to be what's spurring him on right now, giving him the momentum And I watched him last night. He does the same thing he was doing there. He kind of shakes his shoulders and tries to get himself to loosen up those muscles. 25 years old, college graduate. Remember, I started the tour at 25. Bingo!
Well, he's a former All-American. Bowled collegiately at West Texas State University and had an outstanding collegiate career. Lives in Madison, Wisconsin. And he is forced to be reckoned with. I know a lot of people thought that he might win a tournament in his rookie season, but couldn't quite measure to the task. And there you see one of the elder statesmen on tonight's telecast, only 32 years of age. Marshall wanted to make sure I told everybody that Tom Baker's, what, about 2 weeks older than he is?
17 days, yes. And in between frames there, Marc McDowell took his ball and put a piece of tape in the thumb hole, so evidently he felt that the ball, he was losing that ball just a little bit.
First opportunity for Marshall on the right-hand lane. Oh, my, he gave it some room, and it came whistling back. The 10-pin topples, and Marsh starts quickly with a double.
Watch his head. Doesn't move all the way through. Then watch the slide at the end, the longest slide in bowling. Ball's gone, and he still keeps sliding, and the head never moves, and the eyes over the target. You can't throw it any better than he threw that one.
Well, Marshall will be a terrific waiter. Never move your head, never drop anything.
I was going to bite on that.
Oh, you didn't either. Had a high game this week of 276, and he's enjoyed bowling through the years in Tucson. Really likes the heat. Finished third here in 1977, fifth in 1981.
Went out and played golf today. Marshall shoots in the low 80s. For the turkey. Perfect.
Now, before the telecast started, Marshall was looking up at the broadcast booth and frowning and giving us that look of, oh, geez, there's no way I could get a strikeout here this evening, and he opens up with the turkey.
He was playing a little sight job on you, Denny.
On me? I'm not bowling him. He should be worried about McDowell at this stage. I tell you, this kid's pretty tough to ruffle. Last night, Rod Pasteur, just beautiful, striking out in the 10th frame to put all the pressure on McDowell. He needed a double and 8 to make the telecast, and, well, it's history now. 3 strikes.
Needs a double here to stay close to Holman. And gets it. Very emotional player last night. He needed all 3 strikes in that 10th frame, and he was just running out every one of them. 5-step player. Watch as he lets the ball go. Really lifts with the fingers and gets the ball well out on the lane. Right here, his thumb is out, and he's lifting well out on the lane. Look at how far that ball's going down the lane. All the way out past the dots, which are out there 5 or 6 feet. Head never moved there either. Nice knee bend, good form.
Throughout the week, Marc averaging 202.5 on the championship pair. Games of 211 and 194. So he hasn't exactly blistered 15 and 16, but he's off to a pretty good start here this evening, looking for a 3-bagger here.
Perfect. That's
Well, both players are zeroed in at this point. Holman with a turkey in the first, second, and third. And McDowell not too far behind. So it looks like we've got a very interesting opening match here in Tucson.
Are you pointing that at me, Dennis?
No. All I'm saying is those guys can still stroke it.
Holman for 4 in a row. Perfect.
Medford Meteor off to a fairly fast start, wouldn't you say, Mike Durbin?
And Marshall has chosen to finish on the right-hand lane. Seems to be hitting that lane the best, so you would think that the strikes on the left lane are the ones that are crucial for him. By the way, 4 in a row, we still have an opportunity for 300.
That's right, and should Marshall Holman shoot 300, guess what? $25,000 from True Value Hardware.
And it's been done as Pete McCordick did it earlier in Los Angeles this year.
25 for the 300, 23 if you win.
Be a profitable day.
Yeah, you bet. Better go out and hire an accountant.
He needs to get number 5 first. Has to hurry. Well, everybody at home is going to be saying we jinxed him.
He can't hear us out there. Don't worry about it.
Marshall Holman's delivery from the side view. The head's still all the way through. Watch the long slide. All the way into the slide now. He lets go of the ball and continues the slide after he's let go of the bowling ball. I think he's the only one in the game today to do that.
Marshall Holman with an average of 225 even Steven on the championship pair. Games of 226 and 224. So he's probably been, oh my goodness, the most consistent player on that pair until the chop on lane 15. So Holman opens the door, just throws it wide open in the 5th frame with a couple of shots that were uncharacteristic.
And interesting, Marshall, many times the spares will throw real hard and straight, but see how he strokes this ball? Really doesn't throw it that hard. Not much turn. Tried to throw it straight at it, and the ball just moved a little bit and chopped that 2 clean off. He turns his back on it right here and just listens for that awful sound. And a pro bowler's ear is tuned to that. You can almost tell what pins he's left by listening to the sound.
You mean he has pin pitch?
Well, I can remember I made my first television show in 1967 in Edison, New Jersey, and Carmen Salvino was on that show. Carmen lost his match. I lost mine right away, and he lost the next one. As McDowell's trying for 4 in a row, goes high and leaves the 6-10. And Carmen then proceeded the next 2 matches to lay with his back on the settee, could not see the pins, and call every single shot by listening to the pins.
It's amazing. Well, you're right, though. All those years of bowling, use all your senses. Both these bowlers trying to keep their senses at this stage. McDowell had a turkey in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. A little high with that shot. Maybe got a little over-aggressive, huh?
The right lane hooking more, remember. You notice how he threw hard at the 7 pin that he left in the 1st frame. He threw hard and straight at the 6-10, and that seems to be the style of shooting spares among the younger generation. Actually, I think it was started by Roth more than anyone else, but just throwing hard and straight at those spares, you eliminate the chop, you eliminate the trajectory, and it makes it so much easier to make those spares.
Marc McDowell with earnings in excess of $17,000 thus far this year, so he's a little behind schedule. Stats for 87, 1 TV final, 4 top 24 finishes, and 9 cashes in 20 tournaments overall.
But you got to remember that that yearly average is just an accumulation of what you do in individual tournaments, and you have that one good week, it can make a year. Right back in there, nice shot.
Well, he knew right away as soon as he let it go on the left-hand lane that it was going to be in the pocket. It was more a question of whether or not it would strike. And both players, Mike, it would appear if they hit the pocket, had a pretty good carry here this evening.
So far, we've yet to see a tap.
Now, you know what's going to happen now.
Solid 8's got to be coming right up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well. So Marshall starting with a bang, a 4-bagger, and then a missed spare attempt on the left-hand lane. Tries to regroup a little bit here in the opening game.
Right through the heart of the pins, just soft again with the speed. And I think that's caused by the emotion being down from the chop before, right through the heart of the pins here. 4, 6, 7. Right over target. We're watching it all the way. It's just the speed is not as firm. Nothing that we can detect there that was any different as he fires at the 4-7, hoping for it to bounce out, and it doesn't. And Marshall suddenly finds himself down 13 pins, and we're headed to the 7th frame.
Never ceases to amaze me, Mike, when you look back at some of the greatest players in PBA history that have made a number of shows, and you would think that a Marshall Holman, Mark Roth, Earl Anthony would have winning records on television, and yet you look at Marshall, and through the years, he is 49 and 67 on national television, and boy, that's just got to drive you crazy.
And Marshall was upset with McDowell right there as McDowell changed seats as Marshall came back, and Marshall didn't like it for some reason, and so he said something to gave this one more room, and he comes back. Interesting, in the 5th frame on that lane, he didn't give it as much room, and the ball didn't make it.
Well, Holman strikes to try and right himself, but McDowell is also on a strike. Live in Tucson, Arizona, palatial golden pin lanes, finals of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. Marc McDowell with a 13-point advantage, or 13 pin, I should say, could advance to 23 should he strike here.
And Mark and Marshall had a little chat between frames there. Didn't affect McDowell any at all. You wonder, after you've had an experienced veteran say something to you, whether you'd be intimidated. I guess he's not.
Well, Marshall obviously distracted by the fact that McDowell moved behind him, while Marshall, he was not set on the approach, was he?
I didn't notice it.
I don't think
I just
he was.
noticed that Marshall said something to him.
Interesting. Such a mental game to begin with, and now in the heat of battle, McDowell pretty much trying to ignore Marshall at this point.
Well, that's interesting. Something like that depends on your inner makeup. With some people, it could break their concentration and make them timid and tentative. Other people, it can bring out the tiger in him and say, I'll show you. We see the response that Marc McDowell has.
Well, he is a very gutsy performer. Make no mistake about that. Bowled really very well last year from the top seed spot in Seattle. Even though he did lose the match, came up with some great shots. And obviously Marshall at this point still a little upset with what's transpired here in the opening game. But McDowell, there you see the look of determination on his face.
Well, Marshall better have some determination on this shot as he's down 33 pins heading to the 8th frame. He's got to strike these 2 times up on the lane. One at a time right here. Gave it a lot of room. And overreaction, what the players call that overreaction. If you don't keep that speed up when you give it room like that, the ball hooks too quickly and right through the heart of the pins. And that's exactly what happened to Marshall as he leaves the 4-7-10. As he waves bye to Pete Tantos.
I tell you, he really is the Marcel Marceau of bowling. He is a mime man at its best. Marshall always has some kind of a physical reaction to every shot, every situation. He is a very entertaining fellow, whether he bowls good or whether he bowls poorly.
Well, he's the type that I'm sure a lot of people would love to play poker with, because he never seems to be able to hide his emotions.
And he doesn't.
I know the feeling, because I never could either. So.
What a tremendous player. He's had such a marvelous career, such an interesting type of a career. 20 titles, 2 Firestone Tournament of Champions championships. He's won a U.S. Open, and he's won just about everything in the sport of bowling.
And he's without a spare in this game. 6 strikes, no spares, 9 frames.
McDowell with a possible 268.
Picking
Open up things here in the opening
right
game.
where he left off last night.
That's right, 269 last night. Well, there's one thing for sure, Mike Durbin. The younger players on the PBA Tour, as we'll see this evening, with Scott Devers on top, boy, they've got ice water running through their veins.
Well, Marc McDowell showing why he was Rookie of the Year last year. He's kind of an example of the newer breed of bowler coming on the PBA Tour. College graduate, All-American bowler in college. So many players, that are coming out on the PBA Tour now are cut right in his same mold. Mike Jasnow, Jack Jurek, and we're soon to see
Rick Steelsmith.
Right. That puts him in the 250s.
Well, we had high scores here last year, Mike. The field averaged 233 during the televised finals.
Well, that's what's entertaining. What we love to see. We want to see those X's.
It's the big home run. The home run hitters. Folks, let's love to see those scores. Had 2 300 games this week. Also one, I believe, in the Pro-Am event. So
correct. Brian Alpert shot 300 in the Pro-Am.
Sam Macarone and Wayne Webb with 300s during the tournament proper. So the fans here in Tucson were treated to some very high scores.
One more. Skids in a 260 run.
Well, obviously Marc McDowell not really intimidated. And there you see Marshall Holman, obviously disappointed in what's happened here. That is just as I say that, Marshall smiles at the camera. Oh, I tell you, he is an interesting fellow, this Marshall Holman. Fun to watch, good or bad, believe me. He's worth the price of admission, isn't he, Michael?
Yes, he is.
Tremendous talent, no question about that.
That's where he wants to leave, that 4-9.
Well, there's the handshake from Marshall Holman. As you look back, though, Marshall's very first television appearance was back in 1974, right here in Tucson at Cactus Lands. And unfortunately, in that game, he was defeated by Kurt Schmidt, if you can believe that. Kurt Schmidt now works for Larry Lickstein in player services. Marshall was only 19 years old, and the final score was 192-149. So I wonder if Marshall, in the back of his mind, is thinking back 13 years ago.
If Marshall would strike out here, he could finish with 209 with 2 4-baggers and 9 strikes. Really sent that one wide. Too wide. And almost got a domino.
Oh, I'm sure he was hoping for bigger and better things this evening. But look at the 87 earnings. Once again, right at the top. Now, if he goes over $100,000 this year, Mike, and we know he will set a PBA record for most $100,000 seasons. He has 6 to his credit. He'll make it 7, I'm sure, this year and set a new standard as he waves goodbye to the fans here in Tucson. The showman from Medford, Oregon, Marshall Holman. So the final score, 266 to 198. Marc McDowell is lined up. And boy, oh boy, the next player in line, Tom Baker, certainly has his work cut out. Coming up next, we'll be watching the bowling news from Tucson. Rightfully so, and I'll tell you why. BV is not only $17,000 richer, but he's also on top of the stack in this year's Miller Lite Performance Cup standings. At the end of the 87 season, the bowler with the most points will collect a check worth $25,000 from the Miller Brewing Company. The second place finisher will bank $15,000, while number 3 ends up with $10,000. Marshall Holman, by virtue of qualifying 4th for tonight's championship round, has already added at least 2 points to his total. Now, Dave Ferraro is currently deadlocked with Tommy Milton for 5th place, while a host of other very talented pros are also in the hunt. Keep in mind, any bowler winning a Miller-sponsored event will be receiving 12 Miller Lite points. Time now to update you on the latest PBA regional results. Down in the Great Southwest, Chuck Lambie put it all together en route to finishing first in Texarkana, while Steve Wilson climbed up the ladder down in St. Petersburg, Florida, capturing the most recent PBA regional tournament held down there in the southern region. As the 1986-87 WIBC official season draws to a close this coming July 31st, here's a look at some of the top scores of the year. Dabbler Mold of Mount Clemens, Michigan is still holding down the top spot as of this morning. Now averaging better than 236. Thunderbird Bowl out of Wichita, Kansas heads up the list of outstanding performances in the single game category. Just 6 pins back. Once again, Dabbler Mold is in the number 2 position, while the Midwest is being well represented by the ladies from St. Louis and also the Windy City. So far this year, 110 perfect games have been rolled, and an impressive 9 800 series have been recorded, highlighted by Jeannie Maiden's unbelievable 864. It never ceases to amaze me at how difficult it is to surpass that 800 series barrier, and yet 9 super honor scores have been posted already this season. The Bowling Proprietors Association of America has a brand new president. But Sonny Franz certainly is no stranger to the BPAA. Sonny served as president this past year. He did such an outstanding job that the proprietors have asked him back for a curtain call. Sonny will be ably assisted this coming year by a group of experienced bowling veterans, all of whom who have worked at one time or another in virtually every aspect of the bowling industry. Best of luck, gentlemen, in 1988. And although he's added a few gray hairs since winning the 1968 ABC Masters Championship, my guest this evening on the Bowling News has been, I should say, has made a successful transition from bowling star on the PBA Tour to working as general manager of Golden Pin Lanes here in Tucson, Arizona. Pete Tanis, thanks for stopping by this evening. Some 36 years ago, you came to the United States as a Greek immigrant. What are your impressions now, looking back on that?
Well, 1951, when I came to this country, my father was killed during the war, so my mother had a hard time supporting 5 kids. My sister and I came Hammond, Indiana, as a matter of fact, and back in 1951. It was very, very surprised because all the modern convenience we have over here in the United States versus Greece is very backwards country. The improvement every day, but back in 1951, I came from a town, there was no electricity, no running water, so you can imagine what we were missing.
Well, let's move on now to your bowling career. Now, you're obviously a proprietor now. Many people don't realize what an outstanding player you were. You won the Masters and 2 PBA titles. Let's talk about 5 years on the PBA Tour.
Well, back in 1964, I joined the tour, and I was lucky enough to win the first tournament I ever entered, Waukegan, Illinois. And I won Toledo Open, and I won the 1968 Masters. So I was very fortunate to be out there with guys like bowling against Don Carter, Buzz Fazio, Ed Labansky, the old-timers. I had a good time. I saw the country, traveled over the United States, and I had a good time, and I was fortunate enough to win a few tournaments.
Pete, tell me about the transition from touring player now to general manager. You're hosting a tournament here for the 13th year. You've been here 14 years overall. What differences? How difficult is it for you?
It's quite a bit difference. Back when I was bowling, you went to bowl and you didn't worry about anything else, and it takes a lot of preparation to run a tournament. But it's very interesting and very satisfying to host a tournament. There's a lot of great bowlers out here, nice people. And it's all rewarding when you see the people come out here to appreciate the facilities. They have a good time, and we enjoy the result.
Pete Thomas, thanks for stopping by. Keep up the good work, and do me a favor one of these days. Teach me how to trip the 4-pin like you used to.
Thank you very much.
Made all that
Danny.
money. And that's a look at bowling news for this week.
Coming up next, it's the Midwest against the East. Madison's Marc McDowell and Buffalo's Tom Baker.
You're really a gambler there, aren't you?
Yeah, Chichi only won 4 in a row, you know. Took a little time off to relax, and I have a feeling that he'll be right back in the winner's circle. Boy, those seniors can play some golf. Meanwhile, let's move back to Tucson, Arizona. Tom Baker, opening shot, left-hand lane, game number 2.
And Baker threw 2 practice balls on lane 16 and left the TV pair, went over to the practice pair, got another ball, came back, and as we see what he averaged this week, 211.
Well, he was smiling
the old
earlier
man
today.
of the TV show at 32. Anyway, came back and got this ball and threw right through the nose, first practice ball, and then got a strike, and he starts the game off with a 2-4-5-8. Tough spare.
Not the way you want to start with a tough cross-alley spare.
And 8 out.
You can see the look in Baker's eye, too. He realizes that at this point in time, he doesn't have a very good reaction with that bowling ball. What's he do now, Mike?
Pray?
He punts, yeah. Pray and then punt, right? Well, I'll tell you one thing. Marc McDowell is pretty well lined up, shooting 266 in the opening game to defeat Marshall Holman.
And he's a strike machine right now.
That's got to be a pretty depressing feeling as you sit on the bench and you watch your opponent stand up there and just absolutely drill the pocket.
And folks at home get a view of what we're looking at here, Denny.
You know, this reminds me of one of those films when you're on the airlines and you see the pilots taking
yes,
off.
Doesn't
It's
it?
back on the throttle there. Hey, the way things have gone lately, maybe we should become pilots, Mike. Marc McDowell on the left-hand lane. Wants to take advantage of Tom Baker's open. And meanwhile, Baker has gone to the practice pair and picked up yet another bowling ball.
Maybe if he throws both of them, he can keep up with this kid, I'll tell you.
Mike, how in the world can you look at a guy like McDowell who's just killing the pocket, and then Marshall Holman and Tom Baker are struggling to hit the pocket? Why does that happen?
Well, because right now he's making very good shots right over that second arrow. Plus, he's going straighter. We can see the trajectory, if I can say that word. It's just down and in, where these other guys are looping the ball out and back in. And right now, they're fishing.
That's tough, though, when you've played most of the week, a certain angle, a certain speed, that type of a shot, rather, and then all of a sudden you have to kind of change up when you get to the finals.
Well, what happened is they came out of the practice balls, and they started throwing the ball, and they were getting what they call, as he shoots the 610 and makes it, a very good reaction at the back end of the lane. The ball was going down the lane and hooking very hard at the back end, and then as the players bowled for about 20-25 minutes there, that oil started to carry down the lane and the ball wasn't hooking back quite as much, and there's a little adjustment there, and there's a little what they call in-between time with the lanes there. And they get a little flaky, and sometimes the guy that goes down and in has the better shot then.
Baker looks for his first strike of the match, and that one's a little wide as well. We've got a washout, so the left-hand lane a real mystery right now for Tom Baker.
Well, he's not close on either lane. Both lanes are a real mystery to him right now, and he's going to find himself so far behind in 3 frames here that it's going to be sayonara unless he does something in an awful big hurry.
Well, it's kind of amazing, too, with Baker. Probably his biggest asset is his ability to change speeds, I think, with the bowling ball. And you can see how slow he's throwing it. He's trying to get the ball to hook back. It just doesn't want to make it to the pocket.
He's not lined up right on this left lane. The left lane is tighter. He's going to make that. Oh, as it goes right around it.
Well, that's the worst break he could possibly get. He mustered a great shot there to try and pick the washout, which would keep him in the match. And, boy, you're going to see a depressing sight here. Watch the headpin whistle right around the 10.
Textbook way to do it. Only the bad break where that head pin wraps right around the 10 pin. And there's almost nothing as infuriating as that in the sport of bowling.
Yeah, leaving it is probably enough to get you a little hot under the collar. McDowell looking for a turkey here to open match number 2. Well, last week we watched Leno Monticelli just kind of move right through the field. One gets the impression that Marc McDowell may be headed to that title match.
Well, sometimes, you know, folks talk about destiny out here on the PBA Tour a lot, and when a guy comes roaring up the way he did last night, it seemed to be out of it as Rod Pasteur started that last game with 7 in a row against him. But Marc hung in there and got the strikes when he needed them. Shot 269 that last game to win, and then 260 against Marshall. And right now he is zeroed in. 9 strikes the first game and first 3 this game. There's that loft again.
Well, the only way to stop him now is to lasso him and tie him up. And Tom Baker's probably thinking about doing something like that. It's a 57-pin advantage thus far for Marc McDowell, who was perfect through 4 frames. There you see Tom Baker. He'll have a couple of moments to ponder his future and come up with something quickly, because this young man is red hot. Meanwhile, it's time for Tom Baker to get lined up and throw a strike.
Well, he's moved further right on the approach, and right now he's just making big moves instead of little ones. He moves way in or moves extremely out. He's moving, it seems like 5 boards almost on the lane, and he needs to find that happy medium somewhere in between as he looks completely confused.
You know, your whole life, Mike, obviously you know this, it has to pass right in front of your eyes when you get on a pair in a championship round and you just can't figure them out.
And you can't make a spare either. Now watch in this shot here as Tom is playing right around the 2nd arrow. In the last shot on this lane, he was close to the 3rd arrow. Throws it out over that 2nd arrow, and the ball goes out further right, even down the lane, and that's dry right there. And it hooks way too quickly right through the heart of the pins in the 310. Needs to find something in between. He just cannot find it. That slow speed, he cannot get lined up to hit the pocket. And right now, and I'm telling you, I've never seen a guy 68 pins down after 4 frames before, but if Tom could end this match right now, he would.
I know what you were going to say. There's a first time for everything. And of course, Tom Baker, as he smiles, was, I should say, the 1981 and 82 Steve Nagy Sportsmanship Award winner on the PBA Tour.
There's not a finer sport on
nope.
the PBA Tour than Tom Baker. I've never seen him get angry in all the years he's been out here and that I've been out here.
Frustrating at this point. Meanwhile, his cohort, Marc McDowell, is just throttling the pocket here in Tucson.
And what McDowell needs to do right now is to keep that intensity up, because I mean he's got this game well in hand and won, and not to let down in that intensity. As the ball goes out a little wider this time, comes in behind the headpin, and we can't see it, but that 6 just doesn't quite get out of the channel in order to get that 10 pin.
How tough is it, Mike, getting back to the psychological aspect of being way ahead so quickly in a match? How tough is it to keep your timing and your intensity?
Well, sometimes it is tough to keep that intensity, because you've got the match won, and you have a tendency to let down on that inner drive. We'll see the next match more than this one.
And if you're a Tom Baker fan, look away. If you're rooting for Marc McDowell, you're jumping up and down right now. Very lopsided match. The first match wasn't very close either after about the first 6 frames. It was 266 to 198. McDowell beating Marshall Holman. Marshall leaving this week with a check worth $5,000.
That's that intensity. I mean, he's lapse in concentration right now. There's not the need. He seems to be the type of player that responds to that need.
Marc McDowell this week was 3rd after the first round, led the 2nd round, back to 3rd after 3. After 4 rounds of play, he was 7th and dropped to 8th, and then last night just edged out Rod Pasteur to qualify number 5 for this evening's telecast.
Oh, he's getting every break as he chops the 6 off the 10. It comes out of the back and gets that 10.
Meanwhile, Tom Baker saying, what is happening?
Watch it as it goes back to the pit area, comes all the way out and gets the 10 pin. He can do no wrong right now.
I would never have played it that way, Mike, and Mark probably wouldn't have either, but he'll take anything he can get at this stage as Tom Baker just tries to get the ball to finish in the pocket. Stay there. All right. That's what I want to see. A little strike. And look at Tommy Baker out there trying to make the best of a very difficult situation. Oh,
Tom,
my goodness.
Who uses a wet towel to put his hand on all the time. I think he's the only player on the PBA tour that does that. It's just total foreign to me to even think of a wet towel rather than a dry one, but he's used it for years.
Well, when you consider the fact that back in 1981 he won 3 straight titles and earned over $100,000, this guy can flat bowl. Don't kid yourself. As he bounces back and just throws himself a double, smiles a little bit, and I'm sure his wife back in Buffalo is cheering as well for Tom Baker. Stay tuned. Leads by the speed limit. 55 pins right now, but Baker doubled in the 6th and the 7th.
Well, it's gone up to 65 in some states.
Only in rural areas. And there you see Miss Patty Brash and also Johnny Campos representing the Miller Brewing Company. Boy, I don't think you'd find 2 bigger bowling fans anywhere in the United States. Johnny, a former PBA staff member, and of course Miss Patty, young executives involved in the bowling industry.
With a tremendous sense of humor.
Oh, she does. She's a million laughs, isn't she? Very energetic, very entertaining. And so is this young gentleman, Marc McDowell, who tries to run it out that a little high. Mike, might he be using this time in match number 2 to start to make some slight adjustments, because the lanes appear to be breaking down?
He certainly should, Denny. Right now it's 2 shots in a row that have gone high, and he expected that one to be in the pocket, and it didn't. So he's gotten 2 big breaks to go right to the heart of the pins like that and break up the split. And even though we have written Tom Baker out of this match, he is still potential 212 if he would strike it all the way out. Marc McDowell going at a 225 pace if he'd strike spare the rest of the way out.
Well, that would be the greatest comeback in PBA history, wouldn't it?
It certainly was. It would be.
Well, Mike, you unfortunately are one of those who authored the lowest game in the history of this tournament in this bowling center, a 153, although Randy Peterson also shot 153. You can get mixed up on this pair, can't you?
Well, yeah, obviously you can. I got mixed up pretty bad.
Okay, talk yourself out of that one. It's amazing. People at home probably think, how could the pros get like that? But doggone it, it's tough out there.
Well, if you get a couple bad breaks early in the match, sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen. Nice adjustment there. He made a little move left with his feet, and it looked like with his target, as we're sitting right behind him on lane 15.
Well, Marc McDowell's got Tom Baker in a chokehold right at this stage, and he's just hanging on for dear life. Doesn't want to give him any room whatsoever. But Baker, with a couple of strikes here, could make it interesting down the stretch.
And, well, that's it. He just suddenly has found it right away. And Tom is doing something different than he's ever done before, in that he's always struggled with getting his hand in the ball. Now he's putting his hand into the ball as it's on the ball return, and then picking it up, and he's ready to go right then and there.
Tom Baker's had a history, and there you see it, loads it up right there, picks it up, and the left hand under for support. He's had a history of wrist problems with that right hand. He did have corrective surgery back in '78 and bounced back brilliantly, but the wrist is always going to be a problem for him, as he told me earlier last night, as he comes back with a 4-bagger, and I guess that's the true grit of a fine professional who has 7 PBA titles to his credit.
And that marvelous easygoing attitude that he has. I mean, he never got down. He kept smiling. I could never do that. I tell you,
that's a great lesson, though, for the younger players. If you get all whacked out of shape and you start going crazy, you'll get beat in a hurry. You've got to settle down and make good, tough shots.
And right now, Marc McDowell's got to get up here and fill 2 frames to keep him locked out. That's the best kind of fill right there.
The only problem is Baker can't do anything other than strike at this stage, and Marc McDowell, bowling brilliantly thus far, is headed for the semifinal match.
And he could strike out this game for 255 with another 9-strike performance.
Boy, really slumping, isn't he?
Yeah.
Shot 268 the first game. Well, it's his kind of an evening thus far.
Just like Ambletto last week. Ambletto started 260, 250 his first 2 games last week. Shows you the caliber of the young competition on the PBA Tour. Leaves a 10-pin, but that's more than enough to have the victory. He's going to go on to face Hugh Miller.
The first left-handed that we'll see. And of course, the tournament's top seed, Scott Devers, also left-handed out of Centerville, Indiana. So a little variety here this evening. So a couple of players that really hook it, and a couple of left-handers. And it's just amazing to me the number of different factions of types of players on the PBA Tour, and how you get so many different types of players on each telecast. It's amazing. There are so many different ways, I guess, to strike out here. And speaking of a man who used to strike quite often, there he is, our general manager here at Golden Pin Lanes, Pete Tanis, and his lovely wife. And Pete, as you mentioned in the bowling news, won his very first PBA tournament that he ever entered in Waukegan, Illinois.
They're a bowling family. Sandy, I've known for years, and their son Mike bowled in the tournament.
Yeah, Mike is 20 years old and is about 6'5", and I think he's still growing. McDowell keeps the pressure on and whacks the pocket one more time for a beautiful 234 game. And he is, as Harry Golden would say, is the bowler with a hot hand. Tom Baker at this point just trying to fill out the match, as it were.
3-6-10. So the veterans are yet to bowl 200. And the rookies, well, he's no longer a rookie. He's in his second year.
Yeah, but he's still wet behind the ears.
Averaging over 250.
Tom Baker will head on next week to Austin with $6,000 in his pocket from his effort this week. He's really had an amazing comeback. I talked to him quite a while last night about that wrist, and he said it's never going to get any better. I'm just hopeful that by shortening up my span and making some other adjustments in the pitch and the grip that I can prolong my career. But that's got to be tough, Mike, when you're in a situation where you have to bowl with pain and bowl with a hand that really isn't 100%.
And Tom is what we call a feel bowler. He likes to get that ball to feel exactly right in his hand, and when he gets that feel, he's hard to beat.
Well, no question about that. He set a number of PBA scoring records, but he didn't have quite enough here in Tucson this evening as he loses match number 2 to final 234 to 189. So the youngster from Madison, Wisconsin continues to climb the PBA ladder. He'll face off with Hugh Miller of Mercer Island, Washington in the semifinal match. But coming up next is Mike Durbin's bowling tip.
In past years on ESPN, we spent a lot of time talking about spares. But most of that time we spent talking about single pin spares or about different split conversions. Tonight, I'm going to give you some general rules, or more specific rules, how to make multiple pin spares or spares with pins in clusters. The first rule that you need to know is you need to find your key pin. And you might ask me, what in the world is the key pin? Well, the key pin in any multiple pin spare is the lead pin, and it's also the lowest numbered pin. For example, the 2-4-5, the key pin would be the 2 pin. The 3-6-10, the key pin would be the 3 pin. You must find that key pin, and then you must hit that key pin in order to make that spare. If I leave the 3-6-10 and the key pin is the 3 pin, and I don't hit the 3 pin, there's no way I can make the spare. So that's rule number 1. Find that key pin. Rule number 2 is you must hit that key pin. Now there's some other general rules for spares and clusters. More specifically, spares on the right side of the lane, like the 6-10, the key pin there is the 6. The 3-6-10, the key pin there is the 3 pin. I want to move to the left side of the approach and throw the ball over the 3rd arrow to make those right side spares. Spares in the middle of the lane, such as the 1-2-4, the 5-9, the key pin there is the 5. The 5-8, which the key pin again is the 5. I want to stay somewhere around where I stood for a strike, small adjustment one way or the other, and use my strike target to make spares in the middle of the lane. Now how about spares on the left side of the lane, like the 2-4-5? Again, the key pin is the 2 pin. The 4-7, the key pin is the 4 pin.
I want to move to the right side of the approach and again use my strike target to make those spares on the left side of the lane. In conclusion, remember, in making spares with pins, in multiple pin spares or pins and clusters, first of all, find that key pin, which is the lowest numbered pin and the lead pin, and hit it. If you do that, you got a good chance of making that spare. And we'll see you again next week.
And PBA bowling fans, take note, upcoming on ESPN July 15th. That's the Austin Open down in Austin, Texas. Steve Cook will look to defend his title down there. Then it's off to Edmond, Oklahoma for the Hammer Open. Walter Williams Jr., a victor last year, July 22nd, the air date there. And we'll take a further look at the PBA Summer Tour for the first time ever in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The PBA Tour, the Kessler Senior Touring Pro Doubles Championship, and then August 5th, the Greater Buffalo Open in Cheektowaga, New York, and that's right around the Buffalo area. Time now to throw it down onto the approach to Mike Durbin. He is speaking now with 25-year-old Scott Devers, the top seed player in this week's event. Michael?
The tournament leader this week. And Scott, congratulations so far. You've been a member of the PBA for 4 years, Scott, and we've really never heard of you. And then suddenly, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, you're bowling for the PBA title. What's been the difference? Why is Scott Devers bowling so well lately?
Well, primarily, Mike, it's because I can pick up my spares. I'm keeping the ball in play a lot better, and I'm leaving easier spares to pick up. And this week, I only missed 2 spares. And I think that's the difference.
2 spares out of 42 games. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel that's good. And they were 2 7-pins, so that means I got to work on that.
You missed a 7-pin a couple of weeks ago that kind of hurt you. So I saw you out there practicing them before tonight's performance. You're going to make them all this week, huh?
Every one of them, I betcha.
Okay. All right. You've got a bit of an unusual arm swing, Scott. Can you tell us how that developed, how your arm swing evolved?
Well, to me, it feels absolutely natural. When I started bowling when I was real young, apparently I threw the ball that way, and it's just hung with me ever since. And to me, it feels just picture perfect. I know it's not, but it's working.
Well, it's certainly been very perfect this week. And that's it from right here. He says he's ready to win tonight. Denny, we'll see if he can.
All to me as Hugh Miller is warming up next. A semi-final match. Hugh Miller from Mercer Island, Washington will take on red-hot Marc McDowell here in Tucson, Arizona.
That's an assortment of different quarterbacks there, isn't it?
My goodness, 5 different quarterbacks. I'm excited about the NFL on ESPN, Mike. 8 games during the regular season, 4 preseason games, and oh my goodness,
I'm
very
looking forward
exciting.
to watching.
Ooh.
You know what a fan I am.
I know you are. Just think how good those Browns are going to be this year. And of course, you're rooting for who? The Rams?
Well, I root for the Browns too.
Okay, all right. Marc McDowell. Boy, is he off to a fast start this evening, only averaging .250 for his opening 2 games.
And Hugh Miller has made him start the match. In other words, Hugh wants to get his score on the board first and put a little pressure on Marc McDowell. Marc McDowell says, I'm the one that's going to apply the pressure.
Well, I have a feeling that Hugh Miller, who stands 5'11", weighs 180 pounds, has already realized he needs to get off to a pretty quick start here this evening, or he might wave goodbye to the kid from Madison, Wisconsin.
Well, McDowell's put the pressure on everyone early.
But you're looking at a 1983 Tucson Open champion. He knows what it means to bowl on the championship pair. How about a break on that 5-pin? It wiggles, and Hugh Miller with a chuckle looks over to his left, and the pros never leave 5 pins.
Well, we've seen a few, and Scott Devers, who's our tournament leader, has left a few solid 5s this week.
We probably shouldn't say this, but you know what a hook Bob Hanley throws? I saw Hanley leave a 5-8, a solid 5-8 in the pocket this week.
And when we throw those shots, I used to say, did anybody get wet?
You mean it's a splash? Bob Hanley will never forgive us for that, but he made the spare. And so did Hugh Miller. And there you see left-handed Hugh Miller, Mercer Island, Washington. 87 average, 211.89. And on television, this guy is a very talented performer. Won his first 6 matches on national television, is 8-3 overall, and that's an outstanding record under the lights.
One here, right there on this pair in 1983. He's hoping that he can duplicate it here in 87. Just like that.
Well, he'll breathe a little easier. The eyebrows go up and down, and Hugh realizes, I think I can hang in there with this kid.
He better string some of those X's.
This is Mark's first appearance on national television in 1987, his third overall. Up until tonight, he'd never won a game on national television. He was 0-2. Very quickly, he is now 2-2.
He said, I didn't know how easy it is.
Averaging 250, only averaged 202.5 on the television pair throughout the match play competition. But he's obviously solved the puzzle. How about it? Oh, my goodness, a solid 10 and the wince on the face of Marc McDowell, who shakes his head. No, no, no.
His first real tap of the evening, where he threw it in there and was expecting that strike and didn't get it. Highest finish in this event, 50th in 1986. You know, he's definitely going to better that this year.
Well, that was good enough for a check by the skin of his teeth. Now, this year, it's been kind of a down year for Marc McDowell, having earned a little better than $17,000. He won $51,000 last year to set a rookie record on the PBA Tour. Overall, now in 2 years as a member of the Professional Bowlers Association, he has gathered $72,809 heading into this one this evening. Can do no worse than win $7,500 here tonight, win or lose.
Not bad for a young fella just out of college.
Yeah, those young single guys traveling the country, bowling well, throwing strikes. You used to do that, Mike.
I was never single doing it.
Oh, you weren't?
No.
I didn't know that.
No,
you and Debbie were married before you went out on tour?
Always.
Always?
Well,
people don't realize how fortunate Mike is. He has a lovely wife who's put up with all those 10 pins for all those years. And how about a swishing 5 for Marc McDowell?
and Hugh Miller, after he left that solid 5 on lane 16, says, I like a re-rack this time.
Yeah, and he also went for the sandpaper too, right?
No, he's not allowed to do that during competition.
Not allowed to sand the track, in other words. Not allowed to alter the track of the bowling ball.
The
once
surface of the
competition
bowling ball
starts.
in any way during competition.
Okay.
Take the lead. And he says, who's this righty?
Oh, well, right now, Marc McDowell is the great right hope because Scott Devers is left-handed. And there you see this week, 221.73, 267 his high game. And Hugh with a 15-9 match play record, one of the better match play records of the top 24 finalists.
Takes very little time. When he gets up there, sets himself, has kind of a muscled swing, but he's just gone. He's made up his mind what he's going to do a long time ago.
Excellent athlete, outstanding baseball pitcher in his younger years. And he's looking for a little break. How about a little help? And didn't quite get it. Leaves the 6-pin.
Fooled on that. His speed was just a hair slower and the ball crept high. Actually got a very good break going through the heart of the pins and leaving only the 6-pin.
Hugh, through his television career, has averaged 223.75, and gives you an indication of why he's won 8 of 11 matches. Average 225 or somewhere thereabouts. You're going to win most of them.
You're going to win your share.
Covers up the spare. And at this point in time, we are very close here in the semifinal game as Hugh Miller leads by 9. History buffs. Looking back last year, of course, Dave Husted won the Miller Lite Challenge. 85, it was David Ozio.
84, Ron Palumbi when he beat Mark Fay. 83 was the same Hugh Miller.
And in 1982, the winner was...
Yours truly snuck in there and beat Nelson Burton Jr.
I was going to open the envelope and announce it, but yeah, you're right. Of course, you lost a toughie in 85 to Ozio, right?
Well, you don't win too many title matches below 150.
No, you sure don't. Well, Marc McDowell trails by 9, but he could help the cause here with a double in the 4th.
Can take the lead. Right over that second arrow. Oh, I thought that pin was going to be interference there, you know.
Where was the yellow flag?
As we have football coming up on ESPN, but watch the headpin. I think it's the headpin that gets in the way of the 5. But not enough.
Clipping. Take that play back. But McDowell knows, oh, wait a second. I'll take it. I knew it was 10 in the pit. And there you see. What's that do to you emotionally? You're sitting on the bench.
Figures.
How can this guy get a break like that, right?
Oh, need a me.
What goes through the minds of those bowlers when they're on the bench? And there you see graphically that Marc McDowell leads by 1. Could make it 11 with a strike here on the left-hand lane.
Squeezed that one off a little bit. Left of his target. The ball didn't finish as much and left the 7-pin.
When the ball goes left to the target, Mike, it usually skids. It gets into the oil too quick, perhaps.
If there's more oil left, which in this case there is.
Looks like it, doesn't it?
Cross lane at the 7-pin. And Marc, when he shoots at these spares, doesn't hook the ball at all. Throws hard and straight right at him. But notice how much time he takes on a simple 7-pin. He's trying to say, hey, I'm not going to beat myself by any stupid mistakes. And even though he's left of his target with that spare, because he threw it straight, the ball didn't go in the channel, hung on and made the spare. Even match right to the very pin. Hugh Miller in the 5th frame.
Oh, there we go. 1982 Tucson Open winner. Boy, they must have been easy that night.
Oh, as he leaves the... What is the dinner bucket on the right? The 3, 5, 6, 9. Right, I can hardly think of the pins on the right.
You've never left that, have you?
No, that particular spare I don't think I ever have left.
Who did you beat in '82, Mike?
Nelson Burton.
Nelson Burton Jr. Oh, boy.
I didn't beat him. He simply got wrapped and I outlucked him.
You held on for dear life, huh?
I slopped out a couple strikes and he left some solid 8s. And
a win is a win.
At the spare.
Need some help.
All right. Oh, he got some help, I'll tell you.
Hugh mops his brow a little bit, looks back down, and realizes, I think I got away with one. I'm safe.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, brother. Well, it's been an adventure from time to time in some of these spare attempts this evening. And even the pros' knees start to wobble a little bit when you try and shoot those dinner buckets. Hugh Miller trails by 4.
And I mentioned this, a brand new ball he drilled up today. Didn't use it all week long. Maybe he should have.
And there you see Hugh staring defiantly at lane 15 and in his mind thinking, boy, I hope I can do that the rest of the way. Marc McDowell, a little towel work on the bowling ball and the shoes, trying to get everything just right.
It's interesting. The left-handers actually are playing further inside than the only remaining right-hander. The right-handers playing right around the 10th, 11th board, and the left-handers are in around the 13th, 14th board.
Which is deep enough to give them a nosebleed normally, don't you think?
Me too.
Yeah.
I never liked it in there.
McDowell trying to get back on track, likes the shot, just blisters the pocket on the right-hand lane. Boy, he's a powerful bowler.
Well, he's using that speed and loft to hold the ball on line into the 1-3 pocket, and as long as he keeps that speed up, it's happening just perfectly for him.
As we've already mentioned, a Rookie of the Year in 1986, and boy, he's back on his way here this evening.
Watch the loft. Head still. Look at the loft. Way out on the lane, 5, 6 feet out there before it hits down.
Well, he's got tremendously powerful legs. You know, he was a walk-on kicker for the University of Wisconsin for a couple of years, and a field goal kicker, that is, and he is a very powerfully built young bowler.
Oh,
Mike,
perfect.
is he almost overpowering the condition at this point, do you think?
Just about. Yeah, with that loft and speed, he really is keeping it in the dry area.
Well, we'll see if the trend continues. Stay tuned. Match here in the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge beginning to tighten up just a little bit. Marc McDowell with a pressure double in the 6th and the 7th, leads by 14. And Hugh Miller is working on a strike in the 6th, and it's time for him to come back with a double.
He's got to put some pressure on McDowell, so it's a must strike here in the 7th frame for him. Very little time again, giving a lot of room. And didn't get the break. He takes a right-handed swing at it. That won't help after they're already standing.
Hugh Miller gave that one plenty of room to the left and almost got back. There you see him. I think he's a little disenchanted. Thought he might have been able to come back with a strike there, and you've got to give him credit. It's tough sometimes to throw that ball left when you're in that situation.
Right. When you see the player trusted in a situation like that, you know he has confidence in his line, in his ball, and his game. Because the tendency is to squeeze it off and aim a little high.
It's been a very solid year for Hugh Miller, who was cashed in 17 out of 20 events. And, you know, they talk about the key to success on the PBA Tour is consistency, and I think that's exactly what Hugh has mastered here this year.
Made the top 24 10 times. So he's bowled well all year. And when you have a year like that, if you can get one win in, sometimes it can just make the whole year blossom.
Hugh averaged 240.5 on the television period during match play with games of 244 and 237. He needs that average, I think, to win here this evening. Hurry up a little bit, and he strikes on the left-hand lane. You can see in his mind he's saying, boy, that should have been a turkey.
Well, he needs McDowell right now to slow down. Not necessarily to open or anything like that. He just needs McDowell to slow down to give him a chance to stay in the match.
Boy, it's quiet here in Tucson, Arizona.
Eighth frame, 14 pins.
Bowling fans really well aware here in Tucson of how important it is to let the players concentrate.
Boy, he just blew him out of there.
Yeah, that was the old dice-o-matic. You see him slapping his hands together, and well, he's had a bright future, this Marc McDowell. I think really was let down last year in Seattle when he didn't win the title. Lost in a very close game to Dale Eagle, who bowled brilliantly that night. And other than a couple of 7 pins down the stretch, McDowell might have had his first PBA title. Interesting how he takes that towel, wipes off the excess oil, and then takes a corner of the towel and sticks it in the thumb hole, cleans it out every shot. Well, don't most of the players get into a certain rhythm, Mike, where they do the same thing every time, especially when they're striking? Definitely. Sometimes I wonder if there's a little superstition involved there. Trying to loosen up those shoulders and relax a little bit. Nice free arm swing. Well, he gives a little life to Hugh Miller. A little bit of life. The thumb appeared to drag just a hair. So we're going to get a side view of it. Shoulder high backswing, nice long slide, deep knee bend. Look at how steady the head is, and look at the loft. My goodness, 7 feet at least. That's like a one-hopper to shortstop. What's that do? Delay the roll, Mike, when you loft it? Exactly. It delays the roll, and if you have good finger lift and a little back end at the end of the lane, makes it finish hard at the back end, keeps your line straighter. At the 10 pin. Can't afford any mistakes now, and doesn't make any. Hugh Miller is in a situation right now where he must strike here in the 9th frame. He is still potential 235 if he can strike all the way out. Right now, Marc McDowell is going at a 228 pace. So if Hugh can strike here, it's still anybody's ball game going to the 10th frame. Big shot, got it. Boy, did you see that 7-pin take off when that ball hit the pocket? Now watch Hugh, again, right around a shoulder high backswing. Bent there. Now watch the difference in the loft. 3 to 4 feet out there. Maybe only 2, somewhere in that area. Anyway, a lot less than Marc McDowell. His ball starts rolling much sooner than Marc McDowell's will. And on lane 15, Hugh Miller has opted for a re-rack. Takes a gander down the lane, and I'm not
He
so
doesn't
sure
really
he's
like
that
this
crazy
one
about
either.
this one. He's motioning over to Harry Golden right now that he's not real pleased with the way the pins are set. Now he nods, and will Harry award him a re-rack or no? Yes, he will. All right, and the rule on this is you get 3 for the match for this individual game. If he strikes on this ball, he cannot ask for another re-rack. If there's 10 pins down there, no matter how they're situated, he's got to shoot it. Well, there's a good look, and that's from a little bit of a different angle. They look pretty well on spot this trip. Just a little short. In other words, he didn't get it out on the lane. Not quite enough loft. It leaves the 6 pin as a result. So now, the best. Well, there you see the reaction. Well, he is obviously very disappointed in the solid 6. Ball was a little high, though, Mike. Just a little tight. Strike here, he's going to wind up with 214, and he's going to make McDowell get some kind of mark. Well, McDowell would need 9 to have a lock, I think. Just 9 pins, and that's it. Yeah. Oh, boy. And obviously Hugh very well aware of that. He needed another strike to really put some pressure on McDowell. Trails by 14, but he's simply run out of time.
That's what he was looking for right there. So often it happens on the fill ball. Actually, I think Marc only needs 8. If he gets 8 and 9 out, he's going to win.
Well, you told me that one time you had to win a title, you needed a strike and then 8. And you said the strike was easy, but getting the 8 was really difficult. It's because, do you change your thinking, Mike, all of a sudden, or what?
Well, sometimes you get defensive, or you get a little protective, or not aggressive. He's been aggressive all the way through, though. I look for this kid to respond well.
Takes plenty of time, clear his head, get his game together. It just doesn't get any better than that, and that was maybe his best shot of the evening there. Just packed it.
It's just the way he threw the shots in the 10th frame last night to make the championship round, just like that one.
So McDowell with a possible 238. His average on the pair will lower just a little bit, but he will bowl for his second career, or I should say his first career PBA title. Second time he has survived and gotten to the title match.
And again, if he strikes out, he could have 9 strikes again.
That's kind of a nice average. Ooh.
And he says, thank you for there.
Claps to himself and says, boy, I'm sure glad that happened in the 11th frame and not a little sooner in the match.
Although even if he'd have left that the first ball in the 10th, if my addition's right, he would have been able to get 9 out and still win by a pin.
Well, he didn't need to make it. All he had to do was finish the game. So it's a 227-214 victory for the youngster from Madison, Wisconsin, who shakes a fist, and he'll be bowling in the title match of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. And coming up next, it'll be left-hander Scott Devers. Both of these young gentlemen looking for their first title in a trip to the Firestone Tournament of Champions. And welcome back to Golden Pin Lanes in Tucson, Arizona. Denny Schreiner along with Mike Durbin. And, well, do you think Marc McDowell is an even money bet to win his first title, Mike?
I'd have to say he's better than even money right now because he has the momentum going. He has the proper line to the pocket. The nerves the butterflies are all gone right now. He has to be the odds-on favorite to win.
Well, the odds-on favorite last year here in Tucson, Arizona was Dave Husted, who won 4 matches en route to capturing the Miller Lite Challenge last year. He bowled absolutely brilliantly. Let's take a look back. If he strikes, it's a big 290. And Purvis can always say, hey, my first time on television, the guy shot 290. What am I supposed to do? Did he? Oh, yeah. Well, Bobby Jack certainly has his work cut out as Husted waves to the fans. Title. And Husted went on to average better than 250 en route to winning 4 matches in last year's Miller Lite Challenge. What a brilliant performance.
Right there. And it carries.
Oh, my, the slide right off the approach. And Dave Husted has captured his second PBA title in a 4-week span. And he is drained right now, literally drained emotionally. He has come from... Well, that was exciting last year. And Dave Husted almost defended his title this year. He finished 18th overall. And, Mike, an interesting week here in Tucson. A couple of 300 game scores somewhere in the medium range. But players of all different factions making the telecast.
Well, a little bit different angle this week. It was more toward the second arrow and left, sometimes getting in close to that fourth arrow. Here's some of our scores. The right-handed players, only 203.9. Lefties a little better at 206. All of them together at 204. You needed 206 only to cash this week, but 211 to make our top 24. Best match play record, Scott Devers, 20-4. We were wondering if he was going to tie the record there for a while, which is 22-2. Most games over 200, 36 by Jacks, and he had 18 of those in a row. High games, as we said before, Sam Macarone had a 300, and Wayne Webb kind of breaking out of his slump. 289 for Norm Duke, and Jimmy Keith with that powerful ball, and Rod Pasteur had another 289.
Well, obviously, Mike, you see the 5 players that make the telecast, and they have bowled very well all week, but there are some other gentlemen who finished 6th through 24th who had outstanding weeks in Tucson.
Anytime you make that top 24, you consider the week somewhat of a success. Rod Pasteur, though, was disappointed, even though he made 4,000. Jeff Miller, a new face on the PBA Tour. Billy Yinger bowled well for a while. Matt Sereno, name from the past. And Ken Johnson with a big, powerful ball. Bobby Jacks, we saw a couple weeks ago. Norm Duke bowled well all week. Palmer Falgren in the finals again. Wayne Webb, as we said, 2 in a row. Jim Pensack from Cleveland. Philip Ringener seems to be in there a lot lately. Purvis Granger breaking out of a slump. Dave Husted, the defending champ. Dan Eberl, another left-hander in the finals. And Bob Hanley, we talked about earlier. Jimmy Miller finished in the 20th position, and we've lost the other names there, but there were a few others that made that top 24.
And obviously they did. Now, Pete Weber, the tour's leading money winner, came back and bowled here in Tucson, his first appearance on the summer tour, and did not cash.
Well, he did make $50 in the Pro-Am, Dan, so he got a few dollars out of this, but at least he got his first tournament under his belt in the summer, and we'll look for that guy to make some money this summer.
And, of course, Pete's still heading up the list as far as the money winners are concerned with $151,175. And Marshall Holman has also added a few dollars to his record. He goes over $90,000 thus far this week.
Marshall making $100,000 every year. Dave Ferraro at $81,000. Brian Voss, last week champion, cash this week at $78,000. And Amleto Monticelli in 10th place with $67,000.
And the numbers just keep going up and up and up. Marshall Holman just a fraction ahead of Pete Weber in that average lead.
And Dave Ferraro in 3rd with $216. Ozio in 4th, almost $215. Right on down, Rowdy Morrow, saw last week at $214. Number of players at $214. I'm Leno again in the top 10 with $214.24.
Well, the numbers are pretty good so far for Marc McDowell, who has won 3 straight matches. He'd like to make it number 4 here in Tucson, so stay tuned for the title match. It's coming up next. Far for 25-year-old Marc McDowell out of Madison, Wisconsin, knocked off Holman, Baker, and Hugh Miller, and he's averaging 242.3 for the first 3 matches, Mike.
And he says, television? What's so tough about bowling on television? This is fun.
Yeah, as long as you keep winning. Well, regardless of what happens here, somebody will be heading to the Mid-East come April to bowl in the Firestone Tournament of Champions, whether it be Marc McDowell in your picture right now or Scott Devers.
And there he is with that towel rubbing in the inside of that thumb hole.
Opening shot of the title match in the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. $23,000 on top, and of course that year of exemption. Oh, how about a little help and a soft 10 on the left-hand lane.
Scott Devers not watching at all, and amazing the sport of bowling that it is. Scott Devers led this tournament by 430 pins, and they're all thrown away and dropped, and it's a 1-game match to win his first title.
That's what pressure is all about. In essence, have to win the tournament twice.
Right. That's our TV format, but the players realize that, and we know that that's what makes part of our tour so exciting, and you live with it.
Well, you look at it this way, Mike. When you watch a PBA telecast, there are 4 matches, and in essence, it's sudden death every 20 minutes. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose.
Scott Devers, just 25 years old. Doesn't look that old, really, does he? 211 average this year.
Imagine he'll probably age a few years this evening from Centerville, Indiana, located about 60 miles east of Indianapolis.
Right over about the 12th board. And that is a ball that he didn't use very often during the week. He used a red one that I see he's still got out there, but this one he told me has a little finger weight in it. What that means is it has weight up toward the finger holes, as we see that he averaged almost 228 this week with a high game of 277, and I know he had at least 2 of those.
It was amazing, too, because he kind of tweaked up the pressure, averaged better than 232 in match play this week, en route to winning 20 of 24. That's outstanding.
But he said the reason he chose this black ball is because it goes a little bit straighter than the red one. For the double. That's the way to start.
Oh, my goodness. A couple of young lions, and they are hooked up in the title match. I have a feeling we may be seeing these 2 young gentlemen bowling on television for many, many years to come, Mike.
And, you know, we were talking to Johnny Campos earlier, and he mentioned the fact that, hey, maybe we've got a new guard or a new breed of left-handers coming out now with Parker Bowen winning 2 weeks ago, and now Scott Devers, and maybe some of the old veterans like Steve Cook and Mike Albee got get out there and practice a little bit. I saw him practicing today, too.
I can't be that old that Steve Cook and Mike Albee are seasoned veterans, old veterans out here on the tour. McDowell comes right back and answers with a packed city strike on lane 16. Well, I don't think anybody's going to give an inch here this evening.
Well, McDowell's lined up. It's just a matter of whether he carries. Obviously, Scott Devers has lined up the first 2 shots. It's who can perform under the pressure of trying to win his first PBA title.
Well, McDowell has thrown 23 strikes already this evening. Make it 24 now with that little episode in the second frame. So you're right. When you average 242, you're obviously lined up. It's a question of carry.
This is to put it back on Devers.
There's Miss Patty Brash, the Miller Brewing Company, enjoying the excitement here this evening. And McDowell, I have a feeling, knew this was an X as soon as he let it go.
And I don't know if this is part intentionally, but when you run out of strike like this, sometimes it can be intimidating to your opponent. Especially Scott is not the type to do that. He won't run it out right back at him.
He has the Earl Anthony approach, where you just throw it flush in the pocket, you turn around, you walk back, and I think I'll try to get on lane number 4.
And we noticed this week, didn't we, Dennis? We watched the match play portion of the tournament. How many times this young man throws the ball flush in the 1-2 pocket?
Doesn't miss very often.
He just throws, he gets a lot of strikes, but he throws a lot of them just dead flush.
It's amazing. He looks so relaxed right now. He's got to be a little tired after, in essence, taking over the lead at the beginning of match play on Monday night. He only slept about an hour and a half Monday night because I think he knew right then he was in a position to maybe lead his first tournament.
For 4. 4 in a row. Woo!
Well, Mike Durbin is excited, and I have a feeling Scott Devers is as well, so stay tuned. Devers leads by 20, but Marc McDowell has a very good shot. And Mike and I will be down in the capital of the Lone Star State, Austin, Texas, for the Austin Open, Wednesday, July 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And Steve Cook, as you said, practicing earlier today, and he's going to go down there and try and defend his title.
He's practicing with his brother-in-law, Mike Albee. So we're heading back to where my family lives in Texas right now.
That's right. Dallas-Fort Worth.
Correct.
Well, McDowell trails by 20, but could cut the lead in half if he strikes here on lane 16.
Boy, there's just nothing stopping this kid tonight. The only thing that Scott Devers could say is if I don't stop striking, I've got to win.
Well, McDowell opened up with a 266-198 victory over Marshall Holman. And then he stopped Tom Baker 234-189, and then was good enough to outlast Hugh Miller 227-214. So he is looking for the Hoover action this evening, the clean sweep.
And it always amazes me how these young kids at 25 years of age seem to be so impervious to the pressure.
You mean it doesn't bother him?
Yes. Threw it a little wide. You could see it from back here, just a little right of his target, and left that soft 10.
Boy, it was so quiet in here that time you could have heard a pin drop.
Well, the fans are really into the match as we watch it here. As he comes in behind the hip and watch, he's waving it up. Come on, ball! And the 6 just kind of lays down there.
Oh, here's the rodeo action here. Come on, one more time. Not good enough. Well, go back and reload and try and spare it. The only problem is
Suppose he was on the cheerleading team at Wichita State?
I'll tell you one
Or
thing.
was it West Texas
West
State?
Texas State. If you don't strike against Devers, could be in the hot seat. Well, McDowell covers up. Well, we had a record here in Tucson today, by the way, for you weather buffs. For the 32nd consecutive day in Tucson, Arizona, the thermometer crept up over 100 degrees. Just a chilly 109 degrees in Tucson today. And boy, I tell you, it was nice out there running around, a little exercise in that dry heat.
I saw Scott out there by the pool earlier today.
Man, you walk about 20 feet, you got to have a glass of water.
He wants to splash one in for 5 in a row. Oh! Solid 7. Looked just the same as all the others, didn't it?
Wow. Well, unmoved by the solid 7, and that was indeed an excellent shot.
Watch his swing. Unorthodox at this point. Comes in, out, but watch it now as it comes right through from here on. From that point on, it is straight through. Look at the follow through, right straight up in his hand behind his head. And he does that time and time again. Nice. This is the spare he missed a couple weeks ago, and he makes it this time.
Scott Devers this year has already won $24,222.50. His career earnings $57,112. If he wins here this evening, he'll almost double his earnings.
Put him right near that $50,000 mark if he wins tonight. Parker Bone at about $57,000, 2 new left-handers. He's got to keep the pressure on McDowell. Pointed that up just a hair more. Left the 6-pin.
Mark glancing up to see the 6, and in his own mind breathing a sigh of relief, thinking, boy, this guy's going to give me a little bit of an opening anyway to maybe get up there and double.
I just have a feeling, Dan, that this match is just going to go down to which kid can strike in the 10th frame.
I think they both can.
No mistakes.
Mike, I know the victory is so important, not only from a money standpoint, and also, you know, you get the trip to the Firestone Tournament of Champions, the dream of every young bowler. But what about the exempt status? What does that do to your attitude?
Well, see, Scott Devers is not exempt where Marc McDowell is. Marc McDowell got an exemption because he was PBA Rookie of the Year. So it means just a little bit more to Scott Devers because he can be out of those rabbits for a year if he can win here. Here it comes. Boy, the wider he throws it, the harder it finishes.
I was going to say, that one looked like it was a little bit wider than the previous shot. Now, I don't know if that was his adjustment or if he maybe just lost it and gave it a little more room.
He just gave it that little loft and maybe missed his target aboard to the right, and it came roaring back.
Boy, it sure did. Really a very talented athlete, Marc McDowell. We already mentioned he was a walk-on football player, a kicker at the University of Wisconsin. Kicked a couple of 55-yard field goals in practice, scrimmages. 55 yards, that's a long way.
I know. You're saying I can't see that far. I know.
Oh, look at those steely blue eyes.
To take the lead. And he thought it was there, and it went right through the heart of the pins. Left the 10-pin only. I mean, he could have had the 10 with company up there.
Okay, Mike, let me pose a question to you now. He's obviously pretty well lined up on the lane, but you can get a little too juiced up, can't you? And actually throw the ball too well? Maybe hit it too hard?
You can, but I don't know if that's what happened there. As we see the result here, look at how everything breaks out but the 10-pin. To me, it looked like he threw the ball well, and the lane that he needs to make an adjustment on the lane. Thing is, it's going to put a little bit of a question mark in his mind because he thought the ball was flush.
Well, you know, the only reason I brought that up is I spoke with Earl Anthony at the Firestone this year, and he said, Denny, when I always needed to throw a strike in a key situation, I would always move a touch to my right with my feet a little bit so that if I hit it that much better because I was excited, I'd still hit the pocket rather than go high.
Devers trying to get back on the strike pattern. Oh, the one mistake.
Oh, boy.
He almost has to go for this.
He set it short, and he knew it immediately, and
got
you're
no
right.
break. I mean, the
well,
difference.
look at
McDowell
exactly.
goes through the heart of the
Sure.
pins and leaves only the 10 pin. If he misses it and gets 9 out, he's going to be 4 pins behind. He has to give this a shot and go for it right now.
Well, as accurate as he is, I think he'll give it a heck of a run.
Oh, I mean, the proverbial whisker. He just missed that.
Gets a nice round of applause, and my goodness, Michael, are we going to see any daylight whatsoever between the ball and the pin?
Look at it. Just With the dark background, you couldn't see any daylight between it. And the look on his face, he thought he had it. He thought it was going to nick it and make it.
Boy, that really changes the entire complexion of the match. We're in the 8th frame.
That just pumped the adrenaline right back in Marc McDowell.
Devers needs to come back quickly here and strike.
A little more loft. No break. Leaves the wall shot 10. And now nothing's going right for Scott Devers. Started with 4 in a row and has not been able to get a strike since. Comes in light here in the 1-2 pocket. The head pin goes to the wall, comes back and gets the 5 and the 6, but misses the 10.
Who was it that coined the phrase that bowling is a game of inches?
Well, all sports are.
Yep. I think it's a game of millimeters now, don't you? Boy, a couple of key shots there, and Scott Devers will have to sit down and just hope and pray that Marc McDowell gives him an opportunity to come back.
Well, he's going to have an opportunity regardless of what McDowell does. McDowell right now going at a 219 pace. He can get up a strike twice to put him in the 220 bracket, but Devers is still potential 234. So Devers still has an opportunity.
McDowell with a potential 249.
Correct. Ooh, it almost came out of the channel to get that 10 pin. Cuts it to 4 pins right now. Be interesting if going for that split and missing them both comes back to haunt him. Devers, I mean. Both players on spares if Marc makes this with 2 frames to go and 4 pins the difference. But he must make the 10 pin. Wipes that thumb hole out again.
Is that because maybe some lane conditioner has slipped into the thumb hole?
Perspiration, oil, anything.
You don't want to lose your grip at this stage.
Right. Never a doubt.
Boy, these 2 young professionals have really conducted themselves well here in this title match, haven't they?
Well, it's foundation frame for both players right now. As we see the scoreboard, 158 to 154, both players on spares, and both players potential in the 230s. McDowell 238, Devers 234. If McDowell does not strike here, Devers can strike out and lock him out. So the pressure just swings back and forth, and that's what match play bowling is all about.
Oh, what a helpless feeling, though.
Well, Scott still has a chance.
Well, I know that, but
so
not a whole lot you can do. Marc McDowell looking for his first career PBA title. Came awful close last summer in Seattle.
He moved in a little bit. Oh, and got the break, tripped that 4 out of there.
Well, is he a man of destiny this evening? Only time will tell as McDowell comes up with a clutch strike in the night.
And watch the 2 pin, 3rd from the left. Goes to the sideboard, comes back and gets both the 4 and the 7, and the 10 pin was over there standing up for a second.
Yes.
Scott needs to respond here in the 9th frame. He's got to keep himself in the match. Knocks that 7 pin out of there.
Now just another routine strike.
As we said, along about the 5th frame, it's going to be which young 25-year-old can perform in the 10th frame.
Well, now actually Devers has an advantage of sorts, doesn't he, Mike? If he would strike a couple of times here and really lay the heavy metal on McDowell in the 10th.
As we've often said before, Dan, it's that player that gets that score in there first sometimes that has the advantage. This is to take the lead. And again, very little time. Most important shot of his bowling career right here. And he can't throw it any better than that. He takes the lead with that one.
Oh, what a brilliant shot on lane 15. These 2 young professionals really putting on a show.
His follow-through whistled right straight through. Watch the 7 pin. And that 4 pin just nailed it.
Yeah, that was a necktie shot.
There's
there.
his reaction.
Grabbed it, ripped it down. That's as excited as I've seen Scott Devers ever.
Well, that puts him in front by 6. This one puts him in front by 16, and it's almost as important as the last one. That's tremendous. That is absolutely tremendous.
Boy, the 10-pin just got its eyes knocked out there.
I
An
mean,
unbelievable shot, just blistered the pocket.
both of them, he just stuffed right in there solid.
Well, now Marc McDowell realizes, hey, last night I had to strike out to beat Rod Pasteur just to get to the show. I guess we're going to have to do it again to win this evening.
Last night he needed 2 strikes and 8. This time, if Stever strikes here, he's going to need 2 strikes and 7. What a performance. He started with 4 and finished with 4. Took a little siesta in between.
But he regrouped in time to shoot a beautiful 234. And now the ball swings back. And the pressure is on the youngster from Madison, Wisconsin. As Mike and I mentioned last night, McDowell had to come up with a double and an 8 as he was bowling Rod Pasteur. The winner of that match would make it to the show this evening. Now, he's taken advantage of his opportunity here tonight, but if he doesn't strike here on the first ball, strike on the second one. It's Scott Devers and PBA victory number 1.
Well, you got to take them one at a time. This is the first one. If he doesn't strike here, it's all over.
Really taking his time at this point. Wants to make sure that everything is set for this crucial shot.
Right through the heart. Devers has won.
Well, McDowell, as you see him right there with hands over his head, I think he felt like he threw a pretty good shot. The ball hooked a little early on him, and Scott Devers with a big come-from-behind victory down the stretch. And we'll be back to talk with the champion here of the Miller Lite Challenge right after this. Score 234-208. So 25-year-old Scott Devers of Centerville, Indiana, is the winner of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. And I have a gentleman to my left, John Cordova, is going to step out representing the Miller Brewing Company and give Scott an appreciation and a big check.
Big check. Scott led the tournament. First tournament victory on the PBA Tour for you. We're proud to present this check on behalf of Miller Lite and PBA fans everywhere for $23,000 for the Miller Lite 1987 Tucson Challenge. Thank you.
Well spoken, John. Let's bring in Pete Thomas, the general manager of Golden Pin Lanes. Peter, let's present the trophy.
Scott, congratulations. On behalf of Golden Pin Lanes, I'd like to welcome you with this trophy. I know you're going to spend the money, but the trophy for your first win, you'll remember it forever. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in just a moment or so as victorious Scott Devers celebrates. Question for Scott.
Well, a champion, well deserved. He earned it all week long. Scott, you needed those strikes in the 10th frame. You were so cool. What was going through your mind? What were you thinking in that 10th frame?
Well, I felt like I had came too far to blow it now, so I just thought I was going to throw the best shots I could possibly throw, and I did.
Boy, Marc McDowell bowled awfully well. He kept the pressure on.
Oh, yeah, he really kept me tense, but I just felt like I deserved it.
Well, guess what? You're no longer a PBA rabbit. You're exempt, and you're heading to the Firestone Tournament of Champions, and it happened all here in Tucson, Arizona at Golden Pin Lanes, the finals of the $140,000 Miller Lite Challenge. So long, everyone.
Oh, great show.
Next week on ESPN, it's the finals of the $115,000 Austin Open, live from Westgate Lanes in Austin, Texas, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN.